Hello and welcome to Todd Rolls Dice, where we have a Warhammer 40,000 balance update. Were we expecting this? I suppose with the host of new codexes we've had Chaos Knights. No, because we had a balance update post Space Wolves, didn't we? So we've only really had Votann. I suppose Black Templars and Grey Knights as well. It's easy to forget the Grey Knights, they're so small. But we've got a balance update that's just dropped for 40k. It doesn't look like there's a huge amount of changes for a lot of things, but for the things that are getting changes, it looks pretty severe. Certainly points wise. I've had a quick skim of the points values, and oh boy, there is a lot of red. We'll run through the article and then we'll take a quick look at the field manual. I've skimmed the balance update document and it doesn't actually look like there's any changes to any of that side of things. Hopefully this article will point us in the right direction if there is, and if there is we'll run through them too. But we'll run through the article and then we'll go over some of the points changes. I'll show you all of them, but obviously I'm not going to talk about all of them, so this is purely for reference for you guys. And let me know what you think in the comments below. But as mentioned, Warhammer 40,000 balance update, Knights and Death Guard. There are thousands of Warhammer events being held around the world every year, and this produces a huge amount of data for the Warhammer studio about the games and how they're being played. The rules teams in the studio are then able to make changes to improve the playing experience for Warhammer players everywhere, whether they're battling it out on a grand tournament or across their mate's kitchen table. That's true, and that's good if you are going down an all-digital rule set. I'm going to start hammering on about this all-digital rule set and free digital rules, because this stuff, all this information, being able to quickly make changes for things that need changing, all of this is good, positive. Now let's get the delivery system right. But that's not what this video is about. We know when a certain army is a little too powerful and overbearing, they can become prevalent in casual pickup games too, so when an issue arises we aim to fix it as soon as possible to improve things for everyone, whether your battlefield is an event, club, store or home. In the last few weeks it has become apparent that three factions, Imperial Knights, Chaos Knights and Death Guard, have had the run of the field. Imperial Knights got some buffs because Chaos Knights got a codex, and Imperial Knights codex is still nowhere to be seen. Obviously Chaos Knights got a codex, and Death Guard's codex was just incredibly strong from everything that we saw. It's been more than a few weeks, but it might just be in the last few weeks where everybody's getting things on the table, having painted them up to whatever standard you want to paint them to, and we've really seen how suffocating these three factions are. Updates to these factions were originally scheduled for next month's balance data slate. Aha, that's why we didn't know this one was coming. However, the release of Codex Leagues of Votann and its points update gave us the opportunity to address these now, ensuring a return to a more harmonious match play experience right away. Of course, there'll be the usual updates for other factions next month, so next month we'll see balance changes and things. Yeah, I like that they're able to do this. They were obviously preparing the document for Codex Leagues of Votann, which releases this weekend. I wonder how broken that's going to be, in all honesty. It is good that they're able to react this quickly to things, and it may be knee-jerk, it may be over the top. Next month we may see some of these changes rolled back a little. We'll have to see. Targeted changes. The primary challenge is points across the Knights codexes were just a little too low on average, enabling too many large Knights and vehicle chassis to be present on the battlefield. This creates a punishing experience if you aren't explicitly building your army to deal with that many lethal threats with high toughness and wounds. But I think that is just the general problem with Knights anyway. They're supposed to be a big threat. They're supposed to be tougher to deal with if you've only running around with bolters and chainsaws. Like, isn't that what Knights are all about? That's more of a faction issue than, I suppose you can point them and you can make them less prevalent, but isn't that the idea of Knights? If you build into it, you're going to walk through them. If you don't build into an army that's going to counter them head on, you're probably going to lose. As a result, we've changed the points of the bigger Chaos and Imperial Knights by between 15 and 30 points each, to bring the total number of big Knights down. The Cerastus and Questoris Knights have gone up by between 30 and 40 points, and Canis Rex received a 35 point increase. The Wartborn Stalker enhancement has been raised by 15 points. Similarly, we felt the current cost of the Death Guard combined with their toughness and damage output has allowed too many units onto the tabletop lately. We've tweaked the costs of various units and characters to counterbalance that. And again, there's some pretty big points jumps from what I've seen. The Biologus Putrefier, Deathshroud Terminators, Fetid Bloat Drone, Foul Blightspawn, Lord of Virulence, Mephitic Blight Haulers, Plague Burst Crawler, Poxwalkers, Tallyman and Typhus have all had increases of between 5 and 20 points. By making these smaller increases across the breadth of units in the codex, it will reduce the number of units in a typical Death Guard army by 1 or 2 in the size of your games you normally see at tournaments. This will bring them more in line with the rest of the field without overly down-tuning any single unit and causing too harmful an impact on the average Death Guard player. These updates will go live in the Warhammer 40k app today, and next month we will be getting our quarterly balance data slate. Before we get into the points changes, obviously there's some big points changes here. Potentially 10%, maybe even 15% increases on some of this stuff, which is, in isolation, it's pretty big. But if you're looking at toning down the amount of units, I guess it makes sense. My idea of a knight army is limited number but big strong things that will probably cause a lot of problems on the table, but they don't have that board presence. If they have that board presence as well, that's a problem. Same with Death Guard. For me, Death Guard, unless you're taking an army of Poxwalkers, Death Guard units, the Space Marines, the Terminators, the tanks, they should be decent damage because they are still Space Marines and warp infused Space Marines, but they should be very slow and they should be very tough. But on the flip side, there shouldn't be a horde army. They again should be fairly elite if you're taking Terminators and things. Their Terminators should be more expensive than the other Terminators because they have that inbuilt damage reductions and however it works, whatever rule that they have, lore-wise, they should be incredibly tough to kill because they just keep going. What really needs to happen with 40k, and again I keep teasing this idea of a video I'm going to do at some point in the next few months of what I want to see in 11th, and part of that I've mentioned previously is individuality, but that also means completely rewriting how factions work on the table. Space Marines shouldn't be a horde army. Obviously points changes is the easiest way to try and fix any of this stuff. With Knights I think it works. We'll have to see. But let me know your thoughts. And as I say, we're over here on the field manual now. This is, I mean, there's no other changes. Votann is in here. And then it's just the Knights and the Death Guard that we've had mentioned. So Chaos Knights, I mean, it's about 10% increases. 8 to 10% increases across the board by the looks of it. But that's almost half the army has had 15. Well, the War Dogs have had 10, but 15. Most of them 30, 40 points increases. That's really going to change how you've been building your list. But then, I mean, surely there's a question of why were they so cheap to start with? Surely if you test this stuff internally and you have playtesters internally, because obviously they don't want to do the external stuff because of all the leaks that haven't stopped. But if you want to test this stuff properly, you need people whose mindset is to break the game to test this stuff. If you've just got people taking narrative and casual lists, it is going to be the first couple of months of the codexes that you're going to realise you've underpointed everything and it's just not making the game fun. Because this is not just a new codex, it's also an index that came out as a stopgap between a codex that's vanished into the warp, but also Death Guard, so 2 new codexes in the last 6 months, let's say. That's not bad for them. 2 new codexes and an index. The index is wild. I think everybody knew there'd be issues when that Knights index dropped. But the fact that we've gone back to a point where 2 new codexes, potentially 3 with Votann, have had their points just so stupidly low that I think everybody thought there'd be a problem before they even played it, and that was just exacerbated by people playing and the data. That shows they've taken their eye off the ball a little bit, because some of the other codexes, and mostly in 10th, to be fair to them, we haven't had a huge amount of codex creep. We haven't had a huge amount of issues. We haven't had anything that I can remember that has had this many changes to the points of so many different armies. It's just wild. And they need to get better at it. And they need to get better at testing this stuff. That's the big thing. But as you can see there, changes to loads of things. And then we'll bounce down to Death Guard. Not quite as many, yeah, that's the index. Mortarion is still the same, so we'll cut him off at the end. Not quite as many changes, but again, it's 8 10% increases across a whole host of things. I think that this is just a bit of a misstep, and this absolutely isn't them going back to the 9th edition power creep. I just think that playtesting got these codexes wrong. But as you can see, again, not as many, but quite a few points increases to quite a few Death Guard units, so that's going to change how you're building your armies. Our third one was Imperial Knights. So this is a wild one, because all of this was done and the index was revamped, and then they're just whacking all but 4 units up in points. And again, it's maybe 6% increases. No more than 6% increases maybe. But huge increases when you look at 30 points per model on average. That's a big jump, especially when you're running around with 300, 350 plus. Well, I mean, all of these, they're almost now. Each knight is going to be around 400 points. That really limits what you could do. You've lost a knight, and that knight was probably controlling a big portion of the board. But again, I'm pretty sure that smarter people than me were saying that the points looked a little bit suspect anyway. So just test this stuff better. And then finally, Leagues of Votann, couple of points changes, some decreases, some increases. This is to be expected. Brand new codex, as I say, drops this weekend. I'm not really going to hit them too hard with this one, because there's some increases, there's some decreases. This is just the standard points changes for when a codex releases. I don't understand how we live in a world where you spend 37 quid on a codex, on a rule book, for your faction that's meant to be brand new and have all of the information that you need, and the points values are wrong when you buy it. Surely you just don't put points in the books, and then you don't have any of this problem. But that's all of our changes. There's nothing else. We'll just skim all the way through. Nothing else has been touched yet. This was just, as they've said, we're changing the points for the Votann because the books are never printed correctly, and they took it as a chance to change points for Knights of all varieties and Death Guard. And I think Death Guard did need touching, and Knights probably did need touching. We'll see what the balance update is next month. I'll cover it over here on the channel as well. I just think this is a bit of a feels bad from an issue that any player who saw the points previously would have figured out was coming. But hey, maybe Games Workshop aren't quite as on it with the balance stuff as they have been previously. We'll see. We are also coming to the end of the edition, so we are going to see a little bit of power creep as the new, well, there's only one more book, isn't there, we think? Is it Codex Drukhari? That's the last thing? Oh, and Imperial Knights. I keep forgetting them, but yeah, it's just odd, isn't it? Just odd, and it's just annoying that they are so far off it with points every time something new drops. But hey, let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to know how this changes your armies, and if you've updated the app or you've gone through the points and tried to rebuild your army, how much have you actually lost? Death Guard plays, Knights plays, let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.